Thank you for coming out to support One Book, One Denver. We'd like to introduce new city librarian Nicole Davies.
How great is his voice, though, really? I was like, use the great radio voice. And he was like, this one? I was like, oh, yeah. Anyway, hi, I'm Nicole Davies, and I am so happy to be here with you. I'd like to start our evening first by acknowledging with respect, as a non-Native person, that the land on which we stand, live, and learn is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. I also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. It's wonderful to be here tonight to celebrate the connections we've formed through One Book, One Denver, with Hua Hsu's memoir, Stay True. This is a special evening for me as it marks my first time speaking to the community as Denver Public Library's new city librarian and executive director. Oh. Thank you, really, truly thank you, that means a lot. Seeing the crowds of people in our space and feeling the enthusiasm and the charge in this room is truly inspiring. To experience this firsthand is just the motivation needed to lead the Denver Public Library in its mission to create welcoming spaces where all are free to explore and connect. I am grateful to the Denver Public Library staff who have kept us grounded in those values all these years, and particularly through the ups and downs of 2025. Through their efforts, One Book, One Denver has returned, and it has been a success. Yes, let's clap, right? This is the first time Denver Public Library has led this charge for the initiative. Our team brought the program back to life, adding a unique touch that only the Denver Public Library could create. One Book, One Denver is designed to spark connections and bring our city together through the power of a shared story, much like libraries do. It's important for me specifically to call out the work of Jessie De La Cruz, and Alana Boardman, our amazing adult programming duo, for their huge role in reviving this tradition. It's been powerful to not only see Denver embrace the return of One Book, One Denver, but also to hear from many of you about how much you value your public library system. I'd like to share some quotes submitted by Denverites that I believe capture exactly why we're all here. This one comes from a community member who attended last month's book reveal celebration. They say, "I sat next to an Ethiopian woman and we had the loveliest conversation. She shared a lot about herself with me. I was nervous about attending by myself, but she was there alone as well, and I wasn't lonely at all. It really shows how easy it is to meet people and have a fun time." We heard about people's reflections on their identity, inspired by Stay True. We read about how many people have felt a sense of belonging as being part of something bigger. And we have read about people simply making the effort to find joy in their lives. Here's another quote. "I became quite introverted during and after COVID due to the world and personal events, and I have found it hard to bring myself to go out and do things. It's resulted in being quite lonely these past several years. So when I saw this event, I was quite excited, and it was nice to be around people who were enjoying crafts, dragon dances, and books. Looking forward to going to some other events when I am able, and I signed up for my Denver library card. Thanks for such a great idea and event." At the Denver Public Library, we lean on the strengths that comes from everyone's differences. Encourage everyone to ask questions and to remain curious, all while holding each other accountable to maintain this amazing community. As the Denver Public Library's new leader, I will ensure that we remain focused on staying true to our values, despite the challenges facing libraries across our nation and in our community. We will continue to foster communities like tonight's with resources and programs that feed your curiosity and introduce you to new ideas. I couldn't be more excited to take this journey with you. Finally, I'd like to recognize some special guests joining us among tonight's crowd. First, Lori Matthews, our Library Commission president. She is here with us, waving. And my beautiful friend and former Denver City Librarian, Miss Michelle Jeske. I'd also like to recognize our staff and the DPL Friends Foundation Board. Tonight, we welcome Hua Hsu, author of this year's One Book, One Denver selection, Stay True. When planning the relaunch of One Book, One Denver, we looked for a title that would inspire a deep connection. Hua Hsu's memoir brings an emotional depth detailing coming of age, identity, friendship, and loss that we knew would resonate within our community. In tonight's conversation, you'll hear insights from Hua Hsu and later have an opportunity to have your copy of Stay True signed. Tonight's moderator is Anna Q, a Pulitzer Prize winning author whose memoir, Made in China, a memoir of love and labor, confronts the trauma many immigrant families face head on. It is a great honor to host tonight's conversation between these two titans here at the Denver Central Library. Before we get into tonight's discussion, I'd like to invite Katie Anderson up to the stage to say a few words. Katie's the executive director of the Denver Public Library Friends Foundation. Without the support and advocacy work of our friends, we wouldn't have events like today's or many of the services that we have to offer. Friends are crucial to the work we do. Please join me in welcoming Katie.
Good evening. First, I just want to mention that we do have live interpretation for Spanish speakers out there, back there in the back, if you need that service. I'm Katie Anderson, and I'm the executive director of the Denver Public Library Friends Foundation. I'm so excited to be here tonight to celebrate the return of One Book, One Denver, and there's not a better place that it could be than in the Denver Public Library. A big thank you to Jesse De La Cruz and all the library staff who have helped bring this beautiful event to life. The Denver Public Library Friends Foundation supports the library through fundraising, advocacy, and also just helping to spread the word about what the library does. We were thrilled to be able to have the opportunity to support this event tonight. Some of you may be wondering, what exactly is the Friends Foundation? We are the nonprofit partner of the Denver Public Library. We have a history that dates back to 1940. So we raise funds, we build relationships, and we create opportunities so the library can keep doing what it does best. We raise money, yes, but we also do something just as important. We advocate on behalf of the library. That means making sure city leaders and community partners know how much Denver really values these spaces, these programs, and the people who make them possible. We try to highlight the work of the library and connect people to something bigger than themselves through community and philanthropy. Please feel free to join us out at our table just outside the room here for more information on how you can get involved with the Friends Foundation, whether that's becoming a donor, a member, a volunteer, or attending a Friends Foundation event. Thank you for being here tonight and for being part of this wonderful community. Enjoy the rest of your evening and this awesome event. Thank you.
Back then, years passed when you wouldn't pose for a picture. Cameras felt intrusive to everyday life. If someone tried to take your picture, even if it was meant to be silly or spontaneous, you still fussed and awkwardly posed, because there was a finality to it. 1 or 2 snaps at most, any more would seem obsessive. A moment would pass, unremarked upon, until months later, when you developed photos you had taken at a concert or birthday party, a proper event worth chronicling, and you discovered some images of friends getting ready to go out, or else a slice of life candid intended to burn through the end of the roll. Later, when photography became ubiquitous, pictures were evidence that you existed at all. We may be drawn to someone who makes us feel bright and hopeful, someone who can always make us laugh. There are friends we talk to only about serious things, others who only make sense in the blitzed merriment of deep night. Some friends complete us, while others complicate us. Maybe you feel as if there were nothing better in the world than driving in a car, listening to music with friends, looking for an all-night donut shop. Nobody says a thing, and it is perfect. I always offered my Volvo. First, it seemed like the cool, generous thing to do. Second, it ensured that everyone had to listen to my music. At that age, time moves slow. You're eager for something to happen, passing time in parking lots, hands deep in your pockets, trying to figure out where to go next. What the moment brings, that forward-facing dimension of friendship, the knowledge that you will grow old or apart, and that you may one day need each other in some presently unimaginable way. The first time I actually met Ken, he asked me to help him buy clothes. He swiveled toward me and asked, "Where do you get your clothes?" He dressed well in a ruggedly generic way, a polo in a non-obvious color, casually tucked into his baggy jeans. Nikes, or when it was wintertime, Timberlands. I dressed like a grandfather. Scratchy cardigans, floral button-downs, an audible amount of corduroy. Doc Martens 5-eye wingtips. I figured he was making fun of me, but he was serious. "Can you help me shop for a party at my house?" My zine was earnest yet cynical. Wasn't this thing that had fallen out of fashion actually great? Why does everyone dress this way rather than that? My father often referred to himself as Eastern or Oriental. He didn't get why it was so important to call ourselves Asian American, a term that barely existed when he first arrived in the United States. To me, Asian American was a messy, arbitrary category, but one that was produced by a collective struggle. It was a category capacious enough for all of our hopes and energies. All my classes in college essentially taught the same lesson. Another world was once possible. Those histories uplift and sustain us, but they also cast the present in fatalistic light, a sense that things could have been different now, if only we had once known the small dangers lining the paths we walked. The day after Ken died, I stopped listening to songs from a specific zone of memory, avoided vibrations that reminded me of a certain register of feeling. Harmony was forbidden. It no longer made sense to me. I started spending less time with anyone who could evoke the past. I started wearing Nikes again, and polo shirts, and backward baseball caps. Mostly, I became obsessed with the possibility of a sentence that could wend its way backward. I picked up a pen and tried to write myself back into the past. I went to visit Ken once at his job at Nordstrom. He used to tell me stories about selling children's shoes. There was a family waiting at the register. I was standing at an angle where I could see Ken coming out from the storeroom in the back, carefully tying a balloon around his finger. When he finished, he looked at the loop, then at the balloon just above his head, safely anchored to his finger. and smiled a goofy smile. He reappeared at the counter and handed it to the little boy waiting with his parents, and the child smiled an even goofier smile. Then Ken looked up, saw me, and smiled again. When you're young, you do so many things hoping to be noticed. The way you dress or stand, the music played loud enough to catch the attention of another person who might know a song too. And then there are things you do as you step out into the world, the real world full of strange adults, testing out what it means to be generous or thoughtful. In that instant, before every memory was placed along some narrative arc, before the act of remembering took on a desperate air, I simply felt lucky to witness something so effortlessly kind, to see my friend do something that was good.
Everybody, please welcome our moderator, Anna Q, and author, Hua Hsu.
How's everyone doing?
You guys are a beautiful crowd.
I agree. Thanks so much for being here. It's a real honor to be part of the renewed One Book, One Denver program, and it's just overwhelming that there's this many people here. So yeah, thanks for coming out. So I'm usually pretty subdued, but I think the altitude is making me even mellower today. So excuse me if I sound a little too chill. But I just want to thank Jesse, the staff of the library, Anna, of course, and just everyone who's been a part of making this program come to life. So as you know, if you've read the book, but even if you, even if you haven't, my book takes place in the 1990s, and in sort of typical 90s fashion, as a teenager, I felt nobody would ever understand me. And it was a sort of sense of self-regard that probably extended to the book itself. And so I always say I'm shocked that anyone outside of my immediate friend group relates to the book at all or finds it meaningful. And I think it's because I still retained some strange, very silly sense that what happened back then was like truly unique. I mean, it was unique, but it's also been so, I don't know, like strange and delightful and moving and powerful to hear about how, I guess, how universal a lot of these things feel too. I'm a college professor now. School just started last week, so I'm just going to read a few paragraphs from this part about college. The thing you learn in college is how to live with other people, and Ken understood this at an instinctive level. He knew how to use people, not in an exploitative way, but he understood what key you sang in. He could inspire you to do strange things, and he knew when to defer. Derrida remarked that friendship's driver isn't the pursuit of someone who's just like you. A friend, he wrote, would choose knowing rather than being known. I had always thought it was the other way around. We were always being asked to read things for which we were unprepared. How can Foucault possibly make sense mere days into college? But you read anyway, confident that there would come a day when you would pull from Adorno or Hegel. For now, you underlined the parts that sounded as if they applied to your life, your perspective, whittling these systems of thinking down into something usable, like a sudden disdain for Nike. All of this would make sense soon. maybe when we were juniors. The present was a drag. We lived for the future. Youth is a pursuit of this kind of small immortality. You want to leave something behind. Record a single and put it out in the world, the part of the world that never dies, granted new life in the used bins and secondhand shops. Nestle your zines and manifestos inside newspapers or on campus, between the pages of magazines left behind in cafes, your words against theirs. Spray paint another's initials in the parking garage. You hurtle toward the future where you might look back upon the intricate secret handshake and laugh at how silly it once was, if you can remember it at all. We sought a modest kind of infamy. Ken and I used to study at a particular table in the library, in the interstitial zone between where various Asian fraternities and sororities flirted with one another. They had a different kind of pride. They claimed AZN pride, and they were aliens to us. We would make each other keel over in laughter by miming lengthy, silent drum solos, sliding a bag of gummy bears back and forth like some slow, erratic game of air hockey. Above us was a plaque with a painting of an old white man. Beneath him were the names of everyone who'd earned whatever award was named in his honor. We would write our names on slips of paper and sneak them into empty spaces underneath him, wondering how long it would take before someone noticed us. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Hua. So I thought I'd start the conversation by telling you how much this book resonated with me. It's surprising to me that you didn't think it would resonate or be universal, because I find, it universal in so many levels. From an Asian American immigrant, but also, from a friend's perspective, I feel that, many of us have lost people, whether it's in college or soon after. And it's a really beautiful book. So thank you for writing it. I'm so happy it's in the world. So one of my questions really come from, I think your book and my book have some commonalities. And I think some of that commonality really comes from the search to belong, right? And I think for my book, it was more about assimilation. And for your book, it was more about authenticity. And I love this quote that you have from Charles Taylor, a quality that makes you yourself. That is what authenticity is. I love that authenticity is such a central theme to the narrator and his journey, but I'm curious how those two, assimilation and authenticity, connect or maybe don't connect for you.
Well, thanks for the, I don't know, the kind words about the book, because it does sound ridiculous, I guess, in a sense, that I wrote a book thinking that no one would relate to it, but I think it actually does. But I mean, if you think about it, there's a huge part of the book that involves the band Nirvana and me thinking I had some special relationship to this band, when in fact, like, billions of people like Nirvana. But I think that it actually relates to this question you're asking. I think when I was growing up, I'm 48 years old, and when I think when I was growing up, the notion of assimilation meant something different than it does now, probably. I mean, I think everything means something different now than it did then. And for whatever reason, I think back then I assumed that it was just a horizon that would keep moving away from you as you approached it, and so why bother?
Yeah.
I had sort of assimilated, quote unquote, enough to understand how to, function in a community, in a society. But I think I was just far more interested in carving out some space for myself, which I think is what we call authenticity, right?
Yeah. I think that's absolutely true. I'm curious because I think you're. Is it supposed to be dark now?
Was that too dark, what I just said?
In terms of your relationship with Ken, especially in, freshman year as you're getting to know him. I remember there's multiple parts where, something about his identity made you cringe or recoil, right? And that felt a little bit like a response to assimilation. And what I mean by that, so let me talk, when I wrote my book, I threw myself under the bus quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think you have to if you're writing a memoir.
I agree.
And, I think there's parts where, I remember the scene that I wrote, and it was me with my undocumented cousins. And it was me really feeling like I didn't want to be like them. I wanted to be different from them. I didn't like the way they looked. I didn't like the way they talked. I didn't like the way they were so Chinese. And I had spent so many years, in elementary school trying to eradicate this Chineseness, right? So what are your thoughts around, and I think maybe that's part of the baggage of several different generations. There's hints of that in your book. There's definitely hints of it in mine. But how do you think that set of baggage is different for the younger generation than for our generation, which really recoiled at our own Asianness for whatever reason?
That's an interesting question. I think you're right that when I was a first-year student in college, meeting Ken, but pretty much everyone, I found some reason to recoil, right? And that's not, and it sounds so dumb now, but I think I was just very, I was just like a very judgmental teenager, not in a way that I think was aggressively mean. I don't think I was aggressively mean, but I think I was just so racked with insecurity that anyone else's sense of confidence struck me as it just really threw me off. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I think for him in particular, it was the fact that he seemed very confident and he did not perceive himself the way I perceived him, and I was still, as much as I was trying to project something very specific, it was something that I viewed as this work in progress. Yeah. And so I just, that's all of that is just to say that it wasn't just him, like everyone made me cringe in this way that I look back on now and I'm like, God, I was so stupid. And
do you think it was a fear of rejection?
Oh, absolutely. It was it was a fear of fear of a lot of things, I would say, but I think it was also you and another person like something, right? And that's what makes you friends. But the things that you don't share are what make you an individual. And I was so, I think, just fixated on what it meant to be an individual that I valued my own individuality in relation to other people more than I valued the dynamic of friendship. That
makes sense, yeah.
And so even though people will read the book now, and this is probably one of the reasons why I find it unexpected that people relate to the book, is because I don't think the version of me in the book is at all a good friend, right? Like the whole point of the book is that I'm actually, not the point of it, but I'm not a thoughtful friend. And I think I now look back on it, and through writing the book, I have these far more, I think, like non-sociopathic ideas around friendship and what we owe each other. But these are things that only occur because of the book. The book isn't a chronicle of that discovery in the moment. And so I think for me, the book marks a kind of teenage petulance / like you can never appreciate things in the moment, and that's what I key in on, whereas other people read it as, for the positive things. As someone who has never left college, basically, like
You're
I
still there.
graduated, I spent a year at home, and then I went straight to grad school, and then I've just been teaching ever since then. So since 1995, I've just always been around college students, whether I was one myself or whether I was responsible for assessing them. And I do think that there are certain things that are just universal to being young. Like whether you grew up with Instagram or Facebook or whatever, CDs, there are just certain ways in which we're always looking to be understood, but we always also, I don't know, like it's not like you want to be misunderstood, but you want to be understood on your own terms, right? Or you want to be recognized for what you think is specific to you. You don't want to be loved for the wrong reasons. And I think it's interesting how when I teach an undergraduate now, they have such a different relationship to, for example, if they're Asian American, like their Asianness than I did, because they've just grown up in a completely different cultural moment, and the possibilities they see. I always think culture is how we understand our own imagination, like what you're allowed to imagine. And they're allowed to imagine so much more than I was allowed to imagine, you know, and I don't necessarily envy it because I liked this sort of tiny part of the world that I painted myself, the corner I painted myself into, but I have to acknowledge that they have such, their views of what's possible are so much more expansive than mine because they've grown up with access to so much more, and they've seen so many more like successes and failures and things like that.
And I think that, you know, the younger generation can find what they're looking for. I felt like when I was at the age of your book, while you were in college, it was hard to find books like the ones that we've written.
And now it's not as hard.
No,
Yeah.
it's definitely not as hard.
Yeah, now
Now it's like you can't even cross the street without coming across
and I think that's cool that a student I teach might think, man, Professor Hsu's like it's so boring what he and like that abundance.
God, he's so outdated.
It's like great that there is this abundance to pick and choose from, because I certainly remember not having that abundance and thinking like, yeah, I guess I'm gonna like this because it's the one thing I could have. But
Right.
Yeah, I just think, to go back to the original question, there will always be baggage associated with being young. It just sort of like attaches to different surfaces of your life. So
I like that. You write that, and this is kind of what we're talking about, but you wrote at one point, when I started this, what was baked into the book was, how do you tell these stories when nobody understands your context or really cares about your context? And you talk about, and I feel like a lot of your conversations with Ken was around or came from that commonality. And I love that you're grappling with this American or Asian American experience in college with a group of friends. And I guess my question is, after my book came out, one of the questions I reflected on was, you know, who the audience was and how, if I catered to a wider audience than I would have liked.
did you say wider?
Wider. And
You mean like made it more like populist?
no, I mean
Or
more
like
commercial
universal?
in
More
some
commercial,
ways.
yeah.
And I think I think in some ways the book's main audience, though I don't know if I intended it to be, was a white audience. Because I felt like I was compelled to do what you were saying, which is, you know, explain the context. And so much of my time was spent on the context that
I see
it
what you're saying,
shaped
yeah.
the book.
Yeah.
So I'm curious.
You mean like you felt like you had to explain kind of first paragraph Wikipedia type stuff in order to get people up to speed,
Right.
to
or
understand the
the
nuances
like
of your story.
situation
Yeah,
of
yeah.
my family, right?
Yeah.
And the culture Like, I think the culture was the first thing I had to explain, because without the context of the culture, you couldn't understand the story, really.
So,
So my so
I'm
my
trying
question,
to figure out
yeah,
like how I thought about that.
yeah, because I felt the book was very much targeted towards me. But at the same time, I could see someone who isn't Asian really learning so much and really gaining so much from the book. But for me, it was almost like our personal history, right?
It's interesting. I really tried not to think about this at all because I worked as a journalist. I mean, I still work as a journalist, but I've been a journalist for so long, and I know exactly who I'm writing for, my editor.
Right.
And I and I understand who the readers, like the reading demographic
Right.
of. And so when I started working on this, and there's paragraphs in the book that date back to like the day after everything happened in 1998. So there's parts of the writing, all of the writing was like protected from any sense of audience because for the longest time I was just trying to figure something out about myself.
Right.
And as I put it together, I think I tried to give just enough context in terms of like this is how immigration works, or these are the factors that compel one group to do this or that.
Yeah.
But I just wanted the book to end up being quite short. So I tried to cut as much of that out as I could without making it confusing. But it's interesting. I think under-explaining certain things has made it feel more relatable to more different groups of people.
Yeah.
In the way that I wish I could say that I meant to do that. But like my book came out and I was in Taiwan, and all of these Taiwanese readers were like, "You wrote this book for us." And I said, "I did. I wrote it for you." And they said,
I thought you wrote it for me.
and then they said, "How does anyone in America understand this book?" And I'm like, I found that a fascinating response, you know. And then people who are exactly between the ages of 46 and 49 who grew up listening to, they think that it's exactly for them, and you know, and I think that I was very fortunate to have not worked on this earlier. Like I've been thinking about what happens in the book. You know, it's been sort of this. You know how if you have a bunch of windows open on your computer, there's always the one browser window underneath everything else that you forget about. It just sort of always been the open document on my computer since I was 21. And I think if I had tried to reckon with why I felt so like depressed and haunted and all these things in 2002, I would have really felt compelled to explain all the context of everything. But when I was writing it in 2020-ish, there had been enough books like by Alexander Chee and Kathy Park
right.
Hong and
Minor Feelings.
yeah,
Great
like
one.
folks who had sort of shown that you could just sort of write about your own experience and not get to not feel compelled to over explain everything. But I think writing it without
Did you have to resist the urge?
no, because I wrote it really without not intending it to become a book. Like I wrote it because ever since I was 21, even as I was writing these articles and essays about other things, like this was the one thing that I would always come back to.
Right.
And I thought, you know, maybe someday when I figure out what this thing is, it could become a book. But the intention was more just to resolve some question I had.
Yeah.
And so when I finished writing it, in air quotes, it was twice as long as this. And that's my quote unquote story.
Yeah.
And then out of that, my agent was like, I think there's a book in here. So then we took out half of it and it became a book.
Yeah.
But
That's usually how it goes.
but I'm very glad to have these parts of it that are just mine
Yeah.
because that's still me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I think when I was writing it, and you were asking before about what I'm working on next. I think writing it in this blissfully unaware
Yes.
state made it so much easier. Whereas now I'm like, well, now I know that someone might read it, so it's harder to just go into that zone where you're just in dialogue, in conversation with yourself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you were talking about how you needed the book for you for a really long time. You
Yeah.
were working on it, and that totally resonates with me as well. I feel like, I think in your acknowledgments, you said that the book took you about 20 years to write. I would say my book took about 10 years to write, but I wouldn't show it to anyone for about the first 6 years. Can you talk about why and at what point you shared the book? I know you did a lot of the writing on the Coleman Fellowship at the New York Public Library, and I know that was an opportunity, but sort of how quickly did the book come together in that year versus all of the time before? And
So, as I mentioned, it's not inciting, but the main event of the book is the death of my friend.
Yes.
And like the following day when we found out, I went and bought a journal and I started writing everything down. And it was sort of like, I think it's a very natural thing to do. I don't know that. I'm sure people are taught to do this too, but I just like, I never want to forget anything. I never want to forget any inside jokes. I'm just gonna write everything down. And it became this obsession to just write everything down and to not remember, but to never forget, which I think are two different things. Like someone once in an interview said, your book is a book of anti-forgetting. And I said, that's great. I'm going to use that because I think there is a difference because I wasn't actively remembering anything. I was just sort of creating this archive of this friendship, hopeful that someday the meaning of it would present itself to me. So yes, since I was 21, I've been like writing it in a series of documents that are just always on my computer. There are certain days of the year where I would definitely go in and try and add things. A lot of them were just like little riffs of memories and letters.
yeah.
And I think every now and then I would think, oh, I should really just sit down and figure out why I keep doing this, right? Because it was like a pathology almost.
Yeah.
Like it was something that I would continue doing, or I would tell my friends who were there, like, I'm writing about us, and they said, like, well, what about us? Like, what are you actually doing? And I said, well, I don't really know, but I know that I have to do this. But as a journalist, I think I was just very much accustomed to the world of deadlines, of pitching something, which means you kind of know where something's going before you write it. And neither of these things worked for a project of this nature, because even when I told my agent about like this thing that I've been working on for 20 years, he was like, well, I still don't understand what it is. So you have to just write it before we could talk about it. So I was lucky enough to have this fellowship where you have to go to the library every day, the New York Public Library, and if you don't show up for a day, you supposedly get fined, which
No,
is
I
an
didn't know
incredible
this, yeah.
incentive. It's an incredible incentive to, but very anti the ethos of being a writer, I would say. But I would just go in at 6 or 7 in the morning, like as early as I could, and just sit there and write in a way that I never had written. I'd never written like that. Like I'm always a very structured, like regimented writer, but I would just sort of sit there and just try and like remember a scene or just live inside a memory. This is a very long answer. So then when I started to do that, I think I had written maybe like 30 pages. only like, and there were 7 pages where I thought this is really good, and
Yeah.
and I couldn't get past the 7th page. I thought this is actually all of it is right here. Like I think I feel catharsis now. And then COVID happened, so we were all sent home, and I don't know. I think the extreme isolation of just of being at home,
The world shutting down. Yeah.
of not being able to talk to anyone, it actually, and then realizing that if I didn't do it now because the fellowship had been so crucial in unlocking certain things, that I would just never do it. Like I was never going to give myself the time to do this. It just seemed too solipsistic. I wrote it in like 2 months of COVID.
So it was like 20 years, but then really most of the work was done in 2 months.
Yeah, and it's strange because I actually don't remember. I'm not a very mystical writer at all. Like I don't think about the muse or I feel I'm very I understand the mechanics of writing in this very boring way, but I don't remember writing this book at all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like I remember
So the
writing
muse wrote it.
Yeah. Those 7 pages that I described earlier, I remember writing those, but the last 10 pages of the book, even when I'm reading them now, if I have occasion to, I don't actually remember them.
Wow.
Like I'll read them
Yeah.
and I'm like, how is there only 10 pages left? And then I'll remember thinking like, oh yeah, you thought this last time you read it. Because I
Yeah.
can't recall.
Yeah.
It's like structurally.
Oh,
Does that make
really?
sense?
Yes, it does. I mean, I think, when you get far along enough in, especially a book of nonfiction, the structure shows up for you. And I think it's a magical, beautiful process. But my question is, do you have your muse's number and can I call them?
Unfortunately, it might have had to do with just the general terrible state of,
Yes.
of the world at that time. But no, I've been looking for the number myself. So did you get that tattoo on your arm after finishing the book?
No, it's really embarrassing, but I got this tattoo.
It says Made
this
in
is
China.
It's the title of my book, but I got this tattoo way before, and the title of the book was a placeholder, but to my horror, everyone loved the title, and no one would let me change it. My agent and editor ganged up on me and was like, no, we love the title. You can't change it. And
It's
then I was
already
like,
on your arm.
Yeah, and then I was like, oh, but I didn't mean to get a tattoo of it on myself. But yes, so now I have this story, and I feel compelled to explain it all the time. So, memoir isn't a cathartic process, but I do think once a story is out in the world, it can change you. Sometimes it's the writing process. Sometimes it's, this dream of this book for so many years that is finally out in the world and, a thing you can touch and pick up. How do you feel about the book now that it's out in the world?
I feel very alienated from it, to be honest.
Speak more.
I think it's that I lived with all of the things inside the book for so long,
Yeah.
and I thought about everything, and I think that I mean, memory is just this funny thing, right? And I think that's one of the things that the book is about is you play a memory in your mind over and over, and you sort of trick yourself into thinking like, oh, this was a routine, like this is
Yes.
something that we did all the time. When in reality, you're playing something you did 3 times,
Right.
like
right.
on this infinite loop in your head.
Right. And there's a moment in your book where I think it was Sammy who was basically like,
No,
were
that
you
was
really
that
close
was
friends or something like that?
that was Gwen.
Gwen.
But,
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
so I think the book was this I think insofar as the book was, I don't want to say it was cathartic, but it was this reckoning.
Yes.
It was this moment where I thought, where all of these things that were just kind of in my head were like, became tangible.
Yeah.
They became material because I put them into words. I put them into language. And so I think while I still like deeply cherish in this even more intense way everything that happened in the book, good and bad, I think now that it's a book and other people read it and I am a character and my friends are characters and characters have characters represent themes and characters are symbolic, and that now that my life or that a version of my life can be read in this way, I feel less connected to it.
Oh, interesting.
But it's also kind of amazing to me because going back to the thing I said up top where I'm like, I didn't know that people would relate to it in this intense way.
Right.
Just hearing the things people have told me about, yeah, you seem just terrible, but Ken seemed really cool, or people using the book as an occasion to share something
Yes.
in their life. Like it's sort of it sort of turned the book into this thing that is no longer mine.
Right.
And I thought I would feel bittersweet about that. So when I said alien, I didn't mean that in a bad way. I meant more like, it's like incredible to me that all of these people who will have never had the chance to meet someone think this like great person was a great person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that that's not something that I intended to do.
Right.
But in some ways that's the only reason I did it, right? Was because I'm
right.
like, oh, there's this cool person who I can't really consult anymore.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, it
I don't
does.
mean like it's alienating and that's bad, but it's kind of like how you listen to an album or you look at a painting and you can forget that a person made that and you
Right.
can develop your own relationship to that work of art.
Right.
And as a music writer, as a cultural critic, I've been in so many interviews where I say like, yeah, when you did this and then in the last 10 minutes this happens, you bring this motif back. And then the person says like, no, that just sounded good to me. And I'm like, no, my interpretation is correct.
Yes.
But now I'm in this position where I'm
Yeah.
like, no, that's just what I did. But I love that you have this completely like
Deep experience.
deeper
of what
experience than what was intended. And so,
Yeah.
it's very special, but it's very strange.
That's so interesting because I had the very opposite feeling. After my book came out, I felt like really seen, and I felt a part of me that I had locked away or kept separate was finally revealed
To yourself.
to the world.
Oh,
Like
okay,
I
I see
feel
what
like
you're saying,
some of
yeah.
my closest friends didn't know the content of the book, for example, or the whole story. Definitely the whole story. But I felt actually it bridged a lot of distance between me and the people around me. That's so interesting.
I think it did that for me too, but I think I think I realized that I no longer wanted to see myself the way I used to see myself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I don't know, just because because I am the one who gets made fun of the most in my book
Yes.
for being an annoying 19-year-old.
As you should. Yeah, as you should. Who else are you going to throw under the bus? A couple of more questions, and is it time? Oh, it's already time. I didn't even get to any of my really good questions. Oh, she's wrong. Great. We have a little bit more time, which means let me get right into the questions I wanted to ask. There are two things that's working on the page that I was really surprised by. And it was, I'll talk about it at the same time. It was the random theme that I was talking about with you. For me, randomness was a theme, and it really began to accumulate after Ken's death towards the end of the book too. But there's the randomness of who you end up being roommates with, who you end up being close with as friends, the randomness of Ken's violent death, and also even the randomness that this narrator, your character, has to reckon with after his death. And I'm curious about that randomness and how you came to it, or if it was always there as sort of this. And for me, I actually think, the narrator and his grief post-death, post Ken's death, is sort of the climax of the book.
Wait, what is?
After his death is the climax, where you're reckoning
Right,
with
yeah.
the randomness of life, right? And how you could find meaning and reason
Yes,
within it,
right.
given how logical you were as a person, and the way you functioned in the world. And it really shook that.
Yeah, I think that it is. Yeah, randomness is it's a cool way of putting it. Like, I think that so much of being young, but also particularly for me, being young was about, I don't know, I think people just want to assert control or
Yeah.
feel like in control of their own destinies. And so you can assert that in the most kind of minuscule, neurotic ways,
Yeah.
like the way the shoes you're wearing, or like
Yeah.
the cut of your pants. And I was definitely that person. And so I think to realize just how infinitesimally irrelevant some of those things are in the face of greater good,
Yeah.
good and evil, I guess. It's not something I understood when I was younger. And I think that the book also could only, I think the story could only be written once I realized that I had to like cede some control, because I think when I was
Right.
younger writing all of this out, I was just trying to transcribe life onto the page. I was just like, all right, then this happened, and then this happened, without really thinking about the ethics or like the subconscious desire
Yeah.
of why I was doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I think once I realized that, you mentioned this moment where a good friend of mine, I'm still very good friends with her, asked, like, I didn't know you guys were really that close. And in my mind, I had sort of built this narrative of intimacy that, I believe is true, but that's because we're all the narrators of our own lives. And so I think that there is an element of, I don't know, like randomness, chaos, like lack of control that is actually pretty crucial to, I guess, just me being able to move forward in the writing, but also in life.
That's beautiful. I guess following that question, for me, the randomness and then the appearance of the fly were kind of in balance with each other. So for those of you, I'm going into very minute details now, but basically,
It's a big
Hua, do you
detail.
want to talk about the big details?
Sure.
So talk
it's,
about
okay.
the so it starts at the funeral. And a fly appears.
Well, it started before because anyhow, like flies would just fly would just show up randomly, constantly, and obviously there's billions of flies on Earth. This is like claiming some special relationship to Nirvana, I guess. But, but it did feel as though in these moments in which I was trying to have a moment,
Right.
like a fly would appear. So at the funeral home, in the viewing, in the airplane, in the plane flying to San Diego, and like how often do you see a fly in a plane? In the booth at Wendy's as I was writing the eulogy. So this fly would always appear, and so I became very fixated on signs and ghosts, and just the possibility of just different planes of reality, which I still do believe in. But the flies were just this kind of random intervention, right? From
Yeah.
a different, or at least I choose to believe they are, from a different plane. And I would just, and it's sort of like I would have all these dreams from 1998 to 2020. And I would wake up desperate to go back to the dream.
Right.
And then after I finished the book, I kind of stopped having those
Oh,
dreams. And
wow.
so there is this, yeah, I never really thought about it, but I think so much of the book is about a character who is really, really desires having control over a story, even though they're not actually the protagonist of that story, learning that it's really not about them,
Yeah.
i.e. me.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I found both the randomness and the fly to be emotional solutions for what you were saying, which is the meaning, right? From what, and, you know, there can only be so much meaning, but there can be personal meaning. And I think that's where you were getting at. And I think they solved, in a very surprising way, a lot of the questions I had toward the end. How much time do we have? 4 minutes? Great. I'm going to jump to my last question, which is just for me.
Okay.
I'm not kidding. It also is for all of my students. What advice do you have for writers who are too precious about their process of writing? Because I know you're someone that is constantly writing and not very precious about your writing. How did you get to that space, and what can I do differently?
What do you mean too precious?
I feel like very precious and not, like, okay, the best example I can give right now is I'm working on a novel, and it's been 3 years, and really someone should read it, but I'm so precious about it. And really, I mean, how much change am I making? It's like I'm moving a sentence here, and I'm moving a sentence there. So, yeah, that's my particular.
Well, I think in that case, it's obvious that you should just let someone read it.
Yeah.
Right? So, but because it sounds like you're already done with the writing,
Maybe.
and you just don't want to let it go yet.
Yes.
But
well, I would like it to be better.
yeah, but finishing a draft of something is not finishing something. It's just sort of part of a process of
Yes.
editing and revision. But I think when you're writing, I think I always just like to remind myself that, like, quote unquote, good writing always consists of good sentences, but boring sentences too. And, you know, earlier when we were talking about context, there's a lot of boring sentences in this book, in like anything interesting. There is scaffolding that you have to there's like a
build.
foundation you have to lay out. And so, just realizing that that it would be overwhelming if every sentence was like a radiant sentence. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I find that to be a useful thing to think about when I'm struggling with writing, because I think like, okay, well, I can now just, if I'm feeling less confident, I can just write the boring parts first. Like in this year, this happened. Like I write a lot of criticism, right? And so it takes all my energy to think about a new way to describe what a guitar sounds like. But you know, you still need the paragraph leading up to it that just establishes a scene. And so, you know, and you build confidence by seeing words on a page. And so I think just realizing that every sentence serves a purpose, but not the same purpose.
I like that. Thank you. I think we have some time for a Q&A. And I've heard that the questions will be up there. So I might have to stand because I'm at a weird angle. Is this a good time? Okay. Great.
And you have to vote on which questions
Yes,
get asked.
and everyone use your phone for QR code. And I actually don't remember the instructions to give everyone. Sorry.
I believe everyone is allowed to submit a question.
Yes.
but
And then you can
the
vote.
ones that will get asked,
have
we have to
been
come to
liked
consensus.
I can jump in
or-
on that.
Right,
So
sure,
if you scan the QR code, it'll take you to Slido, and there is a setup for submitting questions. Once those questions are submitted, you can start voting on specific questions, and those should be coming up. But I'm going to leave the QR code up for just a second so that everyone has a chance to scan it, and then I'll start pulling up the display of the questions so everyone can see that.
How are you enjoying Denver on this visit?
Denver's great. I went to the Clifford Still Museum earlier. It's incredible.
So
It's a
excited.
real jewel.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably a tie for the best museum I've been to.
Yes.
While
Really good
looking,
museums here.
like the most unexpectedly delightful museum. The other one, in case you're interested, is the textile. I think it's called the Textile Museum in Philadelphia. It's very random, but yeah, the Clifford Still is awesome. Went to a bunch of bookstores.
Okay, here we go.
Had a
Here we
burrito.
go. You mentioned that as you got older, you thought more about ethical considerations that went into writing this book. Could you speak about some of those?
Yeah, and I think that's why. I think that I described before that there's a 400-page version of this book that's like mine, and I think that book is more. I'm less of a character in that because that's just my kind of unreconstructed thought.
Right, you took
and
yourself
just
out of
like
it.
memories,
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I think that for me the question was, and a lot of my friends who are in the book are like, I'm not as hot as you made me sound, or we're not all as like you've made us sound. But I also think that that's so true to when you're 18 or 19. You just think, like, these are the best people I will ever meet. And in my case, I do feel that way. I feel like I still immensely treasure my friends from that period. And so I think for me, I think that there's a school of memoir which is about, not a school, but there's a lot of memoirs about like bad things that have happened and reckoning with those bad things, like reckoning with, family dysfunction. And
Are you talking about my book?
and I think that those ethical considerations are very different from mine. Mine were more like, well, the main life force of the book isn't here, and my friends aren't necessarily. I don't want to. It's not a piece of reportage, and so when I wrote the book, I actually wrote it mostly from memory, and I didn't go back and research things. I mean, I had my journals for the past 20 years, so I had a lot of quote unquote primary documents, but afterwards, I then gave the book to a few friends who were in it to read, and then they said, like, oh, like this part. I basically wanted to figure out if they thought I captured the vibe of our life, and occasionally a friend would say, like, oh, like I was actually at that party too, or this
You
actually
totally
happened.
forgot about them?
Yeah, and I said, I'm sorry, but I have to keep it the way it is because it's actually a book about memory. It's not necessarily a book about like history. And there's moments in the book where the narrator, I reflect on the fact that memories can be very flawed.
Of course.
So for me, this is a really long answer, but the ethics a lot of it were around like holding up memory as fact.
Yes, we talked a little bit about that in the back room,
Yeah.
which was about how you used italicization and quotation. Like I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but most of your responses are italicized, and a lot of the things other people say are in quotes.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. So you mean why do I italicize myself?
Yeah, so like talk to me about this archival, like you kept a lot of that
Yeah.
actual language, and that's why it's in quotes.
Yeah, because most of those things are things from my actual journals.
Which is amazing, yeah. But why did you choose italicize for yourself?
Because the quotes were for things other people said. Also, I think italics look like shrugging. And so I kind of like the idea that the italics were just sort of me like this.
Part of your character?
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it.
But it was really the only other way to delineate different
Yeah.
registers of speech.
Cool. It's really interesting. Okay.
Should I just
you-
answer the top
Yes,
question?
sorry. Everyone can read. Yeah, great.
That's a very good question, and I think I don't know that I have an answer to this question. I think I was generally just trying to understand why. There's the moment in my life, but also in my book, when my mom says to me, like, "Why do you care about this so much?" And now that I'm a parent, I understand why she was saying that, because she was basically like, "You're just his friend. You knew him for a couple of years, but there's a whole bunch of people who are far more affected than you are, and you are 21 years old, and you need to just continue living your life." And
That seems
throughout-
unfair.
it is, but I mean, it was, but I also now understand that maybe it was a little brusque, but I understand what she meant. And I think over time, there'd be people in my life who, like if I met you in like 2003 and we were at a bar, I would tell you all of this immediately as a sort of quick download of like, this is who I am. And then at a certain point, I was like, wait, why is this so central to how I understand myself?
Yeah.
Because the older I got, the more it was like, when I was 21, it had been 3 years of my life, which is still like 1/7 of your life, which is pretty significant. But then by the time I was 30, I thought, all right, now this is like 10%. Wait, what, 10? Yeah, 10. And then when I was 31, I'm like, it's less than 10%. And when I turned 40, I thought, I can now no longer picture who he would have been. Like when we graduated from college, I was like, I kind of knew what was in the realm of possibility. And so as I got older, I was just like, why am I still hung up on this?
Yeah.
Like terrible things happen to people all the time, and they don't then like braid it into how they view like friendship. Like it's not. It became the prism through which I viewed every new person in my life.
Yeah.
And then I thought, like, you know what? This is no longer about him. It's about me and my own like weird absorption. And so I think that was the question I was trying to answer, was like, what part of this is actually about another person? What part of this is about me? How have I actually changed over this period of time? And what are the positive and negative effects of having been like extremely I mean, because I'm still friends with like 95% of the people in the book, and it wasn't necessarily something that we talked about a lot, but it's something that we talk about, every year, a couple times. And so people would be like, why are you still like back here,
Right.
whereas we're like over here now? And so I think I just wanted to, that's kind of generally the question.
I love that the question was showing up in your real life and that you had to write kind of through it.
Yeah, that's why I was terrified to show my friend. You know, like I knew that my friends would have to be the first readers, but they were also the readers that I dreaded the most. And,
of course.
And then after that, I kind of didn't care anymore about the other people who were going to read it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because it was for them.
Yeah. Do we have time for more questions? Oh, we have 10 more minutes. Great. This one is about Ken's family, and if they knew before it was published, and did they have any thoughts about the book?
Yeah, I sent his mother and his sister a copy of the book.
And did they respond?
I've talked to his mom about it a few times. She,
Awesome.
you know, like what I was saying about my mom's response to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think my mom was sort of like, you can't possibly, whatever you're feeling is dwarfed by what his parents feel. Because my mom was basically like, when you're older, you'll understand that that you're lucky that you still have this like life, but there's nothing more tragic than a parent having to say goodbye to their child.
Yeah.
And I understood that a lot more when I got older, and I also sort of felt that profoundly hanging out with his mom.
Yeah.
And just sort of how I think on one hand it was just like a version of him that she had never had access to because we were peers, but that it was still just it remains like a tremendously, painful thing.
Yeah, and how you saw him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. What are you reading currently, and can you give some recommendations?
I feel like, you know what I just read recently, but it's Elena Ferrante,
The
My Brilliant
Neapolitan
Friend.
series?
Yeah.
Isn't it so good?
It's so good.
I actually love it.
I think I retain a kind of the 90s part of me that I retain is that if something's too popular, I'll like wait it out.
Yeah, and that's all about friendship too.
I think I just didn't, for whatever reason, I just had never picked up any of those books.
Yeah.
And then, it's the Neapolitan Court. I'm sure everyone, it's
Yeah.
very popular. But they're just phenomenal.
I love the portrayal.
I couldn't put them down. So that was something that I read this summer that I really loved. I just read The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. Another book
Wow,
that
really
was, like,
late. Really
yeah, I
late,
know.
Hua.
I'm really catching up on stuff. That was really good. Great Gatsby. What else? And then there was this book by Hisham Matar, I think his name is, called My Friend, that came out a couple years ago. I had like incredibly good luck reading earlier this summer, where every single book I read was like instantly a favorite.
Wow.
So I like these are all very good books.
This question always stumps me.
I know. No,
I'm always like, oh.
I'm thinking about.
I promise I do read, but now that you're putting me on the spot.
Okay, there's one more book I want to recommend. It's called What Is Mine? And it's on, I think it's called What Is Mine? And it's this Brazilian sociologist writing about his father, who was a long-distance truck driver working in the logging industry in Brazil. And it's a really unusual book, but I thought it was really great. I don't remember the author's name, but it's a really cool book about his father that manages to be like really unsentimental, but it's this really vivid picture of just deforestation and just kind of the means that people have to go to survive. And I thought it was really good.
What is mine?
Yeah.
I struggle with my memories, being truthful. I'm afraid I'll misrepresent the people in my memories. Do you struggle with the correctness of your book?
I sort of built this into being a feature of my book, I would say, because I did, as I mentioned before, like my friend Anthony, who actually took the photo on the cover of the book, he's my roommate in college. He was one of the first people to read it, and he said, "Hey, you know what? I was there when this happened too," and I had to say, like, well, this is all from memory, so I can't now rewrite it around the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that the book it's funny in a way that it's described as, people who don't know me describe it as truthful. And I'm like, how do you know? Like, how do you know if I'm being dishonest? But that's actually part of what the book is interrogating, right? Which is, there are these moments in the book where the narrator, me, is challenged with, whether I'm remembering things correctly.
Yeah.
And so I tried to just build that into the book, because I think that's also something that I was struggling with a little bit, which was like, how accurately can you project a friendship from 1995 to 1998 into adult life, you know? But I think that that's also just a natural part of being a person, is just always trying to figure out, your relationship to people, and also whether you see the same things that they do.
Right.
And I don't know, I think I don't really have an answer for that, but I think it's just a very natural part of being a person.
I mean, I think all good memoirs, when you read them, you access a different world, and you access sort of a different ecosystem, a different system. And I felt that it was such a complete world that you recreated or created.
Thanks. I mean, I think the world, I want to say, I think the world is accurate. I mean, I think if I did the research, quote unquote, that I did was very much about the world.
Yeah.
I mean, of like the things that we were into, and sort of the parameters of your imagination. I think that's the thing that I really wanted to capture more than anything, was just the feeling of boredom in 1995. It just was very different than 2025, you know? And not to say, I didn't want to write something that was like, dial-up internet, a feature of blah, blah, but just because when you're in that moment, you don't understand that that's your unique context. Instead, I wanted to just focus on like the feeling of that moment and that world.
Yeah.
And so in some ways I was more concerned with the accuracy of that than the accuracy of what I remembered about day-to-day things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One last one. Oh, okay. So can you share some more of your thoughts on the fax conversation with your father? And I will add, I found that so endearing. Your dad is so nice.
Is he though? No, he's a good guy.
He really cares about
like
what you think.
He's the sleeper star of the book. Is
Yes.
my father.
Wonderful character.
Well, there's a couple things. I still do make zines. You could follow me at Suspended in Time on Instagram. But they're all zines about other people, not about myself. I really wanted this book to, I think it's very funny that the book quotes like Aristotle and Derrida, but then also like Ken and my father. Like I just like that these are the people who are. This is like how our intellectual world actually works, right? Like it's the things that you're supposed to learn, but then the wisdom of the people around you. And I've really felt very lucky that my family is sufficiently hoardery enough to have kept these faxes, because I did not remember. I mean, I remembered the faxes, like they're the formative like core memory, but when I read them and I rediscovered them maybe 10 years ago, I did not again, it's like I was a kid. I didn't understand parenthood. I did not recognize how emotionally aspirational they were. You know, like I didn't realize that he was really trying to reach out and ask me these questions. And like he doesn't remember either. He doesn't look back and think like, oh yeah, that was the era when we thought you were really depressed, and so we were trying to, you know, because there were. I think that as a parent, you're always in crisis mode, or you're always trying to deal with the situation. You don't really see the long arc of things, and so I think he was like, yeah, that was when we thought that, you know, I don't know, just for a variety of reasons, he was very concerned with the emotional contours of my high school years. And I did not recognize that because I was a high school student, and you're not supposed to care about what your parents are doing or thinking at that age. So to have that chance to actually revisit that, but also to, I don't know, show my parents and remind them of that moment, not as a way of saying like, yeah, thank you, or because you know, they were just doing it because that's just what they thought they were supposed to do. It was really great. And but now whenever my father and I get in an argument, he'll say like, now you'll have to write another book about me, telling them how I really am, you know. But that's the only funny thing that's come out of the faxes. It's just is that he I think now understands that. I mean, it's very strange. Like I think he and my mom both have like they're characters now, and so I think they're kind of aware of that and uncomfortable about it.
Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks everyone for
Everyone.
spending Friday night here.
Yes. If you like your book signed, please look it on your chair. Staff will come around with sticky notes and then release rows from the back and the front for signing. And then also on your way out, don't forget to pick up One Book, One Denver program guide. There's so many amazing events connected to Stay True that's happening. So please take a look. And thank you all so much for being here. It's been a pleasure. Also, I'm going to take a photo of all of you.
I'm going to chime in really quick. Everyone, if you take this survey on the back, this helps us know what you like, know what program